Alright, so you just started watching F1, and the Brazilian Grand Prix is right around the corner. And the term sprint qualifying, it's flying around all across YouTube, the F1 channel, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. But you just don't know what the hell it is, right? Well, we're here to simplify that. Let's get into it. Alright, so let's start by understanding one simple term, qualifying. What does it mean? Why is it important? And what purpose does it serve in the whole Grand Prix? Alright, so a typical Grand Prix generally runs over the course of a weekend, which comprises of the Friday practice sessions, the qualifying, and then the final race on Sunday. So one thing that's constant is the final race, which is always on a Sunday, unless there are external factors that affect. There have been some exceptions where the race has been delayed or postponed, but we're not going to get into it. The qualifying, on the other hand, is important for the final race because it determines the starting grid or the starting order of how the race is going to go. So for a typical qualifying session, Q1 starts first and the slowest of the 5 drivers, they get knocked out, and then the grid for the last 5 drivers is made in Q1. Q2, another set of 5 drivers pop off, and then Q3 is the final 10 that decide the starting 10 grid, and that's a typical qualifying session. Now, before every qualifying session, we have 3 practice sessions, generally 2 on a Friday, and then 1 on a Saturday, and then we have a qualifying which ends the Saturday, right? And that's our typical weekend structures. But what the hell is sprint qualifying, right? Because the Brazilian Grand Prix, the Italian Grand Prix, and Silverstone Grand Prix featured a sprint qualifying.
So a sprint qualifying essentially is just a typical race weekend, but instead of 3 practice sessions, we have 2 practice sessions, one which is done on Friday, followed by a qualifying. Now that is interesting. After the qualifying, we have our practice 2, and then we have a sprint race. This sprint race will decide the starting order for the race on Sunday. So essentially, sprint is basically the qualifying sessions that we have in the normal race. But instead of having a qualifying on Saturday, we have a qualifying on Friday. But if you want to go into more technical regulations, we know that on a typical weekend, after the qualifying, the cars are under parc fermé conditions. And what the hell is parc fermé, you ask? It's just a fancy French word for just saying that once your car is out on the track on a qualifying day, you cannot change your car setup significantly. All you can do is make minor changes. Well, if your car gets wrecked during the qualifying, obviously you can work on it, but then your car would have to start from the pit lane instead of the grid. And sprint qualifying session on a Friday is just the same as normal qualifying on any other weekend. It's just that it decides the starting grid for a sprint race, and then the results of a sprint race decide the starting grid for a normal race. In between, we have a practice session in which again your cars are still under parc fermé conditions, so you cannot work on your car. All you can do is do regular checkups, regular maintenance, and stuff like that.
And it stirs up the pot. All these 3 races were a mix in the midfield, in the top field, and even with the back markers. What caused this? The sprint qualifying session changes the tire strategy quite a bit. Let's understand that. Now, the absolute key difference between a sprint qualifying and a normal Grand Prix is that the tire allocation is free. The top 10 runners in a typical weekend don't have a free tire choice. They have to run the compound that they used in qualifying. Whereas in the sprint qualifying, you can basically use any type of compound. So you have a free choice, and generally teams are going to try to use a softer compound to get the maximum performance, since the softer compound is the larger of the allocated tires. But with the Brazilian Grand Prix right around the corner, which has significantly more laps than the other circuits in the back, even though the circuit is shorter, it does have a lot of laps to cover, and it's going to be interesting to see how well these tires hold up Interlagos circuit. So while all of this is quite difficult to understand, just know for a fact, on simple terms, a normal qualifying will have 3 practice sessions, 1 normal qualifying, and then a race on Sunday. Whereas the sprint qualifying will have 1 practice session followed by a qualifying session that sets the grid for a sprint race, The sprint race is setting the grid for the final race on Sunday, and then the final race on Sunday is it's just the final race on Sunday, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. Why it's very interesting to see Formula One bringing all of this to the table. Well, not all fans need to understand the behind the scenes and the technical regulations and the tire compound choices that they're going to use. F1 is doing this for the fans to get all the midfield teams and the top teams to converge and battle it out. While a lot of people feel otherwise, I just feel that this mix in Formula One was definitely needed. Everything was it was getting monotonous, right? Everything was just plain simple old Grand Prix style weekend. A lot of teams really don't like the new weekend structure that they're trying to bring, but let's understand for a fact that Formula One had been declining in its viewerships. But in recent years, especially with Netflix's Drive to Survive, everything is ramping up. F1 is trying to get more fans involved, and I think it's the best time to start watching F1. And I hope you guys understood what I was trying to explain and try to see the Brazilian Grand Prix, try to enjoy the Grand Prix. We had a qualifying today. And I hope you guys follow it for the sprint weekend. I'm gonna have a post-race review as well. I'm also planning a talk show with some of my F1 fanatic buddies, so do look out for that. And I hope you guys have a nice one. Peace.